China wants to avoid being caught up in the sanctions imposed on Russia for its invasion on Ukraine. In one of Beijing's most explicit statements yet on American penalties, the foreign minister Wang Yi said China is not party to the crisis and doesn't want to be impacted by sanctions. Joining us now, we've got a special guest in Dubai. It is our senior editor for international government, Ros Matheson. Ros, we normally talk to you at the other side of the world. You're here. It's great to have you at this time. The language on the readout between the US and China was substantive and constructive. What does that translate to? What's your takeaway from 6 hours of marathon talks?
It was interesting because there was very little in the way of tangibles after the meeting. They both sounded positive noises, but what we're really seeing through this, and especially the comments from the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi afterward, is a high level of concern in China at getting caught up in this, either by Russia or by the US, because they don't want to intervene militarily in Ukraine and support Russia. At the same time, they don't want to condemn Russia for its actions, but they don't want the US to train its glare on China in all of this and say, hang on, if you're not really condemning Russia, you're supporting it, and therefore we're going to penalise you as well. There's a high level of concern in all those comments about the state of the Chinese economy, and that's really crucial for Xi Jinping in this year. He's seeking an unprecedented third term as president. He needs stability at home. He needs the economy doing well. And right now, the challenges for the economy are piling up. So the last thing you want to do is to add further US penalties on China to that pile.
Roz, we've had a number of headlines coming out on Russia asking China for support, according to U.S. intelligence. You have China yesterday saying essentially that's fake news, but a new report, the U.S. telling European allies that Russia has asked China for armed drones. How do we interpret this back and forth?
Well, these requests were made at the very start of the war, so several weeks ago, and so they're not necessarily a reflection of how the war is going at the moment on the ground for Russia, but what it does show is that Russia is expecting this could go on for quite some time, and what you saw in response from China over the past 24 hours to this becoming public was quite a sense of alarm. They really don't want to have to be making a decision about sending weaponry to Russia, especially if that's going to go into Ukraine. That's a military intervention on the part of China, and something they don't want to do. They always take a stance in these moments of neutrality, official neutrality, whether that's neutrality in quote marks or something else, but at least they're saying we're not going to get in this fight. This is Russia's thing, not us. And very much a concern that through this publicity they might end up getting drawn into it. So you saw very strong statements from China yesterday saying in no way are we considering this is actually disinformation.
Looking to get your share of sustainable investments?
Investors weigh the risk of a possible Russia default on debt and what that could actually mean for the broader financial system. Leslie Picker joins us with the latest. Leslie, good morning.
Hey, Becky, good morning. Russia has about $117 million worth of interest payments due tomorrow to international bondholders. The question, though, is whether the Kremlin will pay and how. Russia's finance minister said it was, quote, fair for the country to pay in rubles while its reserves remain frozen due to sanctions. These bonds were issued in dollars without an option for the Kremlin to pay in local currency, and it might not be feasible given the sanctions to get rubles to bondholders anyway. So ratings agencies, bond investors, and the overall market is simply expecting Russia to miss its payment, but a hard default would not take place for another 30 days, a grace period according to a delinquent borrower. In the meantime, another big uncertainty surrounds credit default swaps, which pay out if Russia meets the technical term of a default, as decided by ISDA, the International Swaps and Derivatives Association. JP Morgan strategists wrote yesterday that, quote, as it stands, it looks like there will be a CDS trigger on Russian sovereign bonds, whether starting this week or later. Russia has about $20 billion in foreign currency bonds, while ruble-denominated bonds amount to $42 billion. There are also billions more in derivatives linked to a potential default. A U.S. Treasury official told Reuters overnight that they see limited direct exposure to Russian sovereign bonds within the U.S. financial system. The primary impact of all of this would be on Russia raising its future borrowing costs, guys.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching. Russia may refuse to return hundreds of airliners rented from foreign firms, and that could spark new chaos for an industry already battered by years of lockdowns and soaring oil prices. Russia's airlines have over 500 jets leased from foreign companies, worth billions of dollars. But Western sanctions mean the leasing firms have been given until March 28th to sever ties with the country's carriers. That has led to a game of cat and mouse around the world as lessors attempt to repossess the planes. They're having limited success, with just a handful seized. Now, a draft law published Thursday shows Moscow intends to bar its airlines from returning planes if leases are cancelled. It will also order them to pay for the leases in rubles. Industry experts say it will guarantees years of expensive legal disputes. One told Reuters it will mean a decade of lawsuits. Aircraft lessors may hope to get insurance payouts if their planes aren't returned. But that too appears uncertain, with the aviation insurance market seen struggling to make the multi-billion-dollar payouts that would be involved.